Alrighty, so today we're looking at access and we're just going to run through the basics again first of designing a table. So if you open up your access and you've already got tables inside there, you'll start off by going to the create and you'll create a table from there. So once it opens up, you'll see that you have ID, new, and then click to add. Now you could create your fields from the front end over here, but it is better practice to go to the back end, which you'll find on your table fields tab under on the left hand side under your different views. So if I click on the drop down arrow, I have my data sheet view, which is the current view that you see over there, and then we have our design view over here. Before we can go to our design view, we need to give our table a name. So as you can see with the one that's currently over there, I've just named it as deliveries. You can put a T at the end for table or TBL or whichever you want, table. So I'm going to call this one example. Just note that when you are creating your tables, it is best practice to keep it as one word. So we can say example table like that using a capital letter, separate it, or we can use the underscore instead of a space, and we can say table or TBL or just T, just so that we can distinguish between the table and the queries, the forms, reports. So that would be T for table, Q for query, F for forms, and R for reports. So let's leave it as T and say OK. So the first thing that you need to look at when creating a table is your primary key. All right, your primary key is what links different tables together. Now we're not going to be covering that in this time, but your primary key is your most vital key that will use when linking various tables together. You can switch it on and off by simply clicking on the primary key icon in the ribbon under your table design. Our first field is our ID. We're going to leave it as the ID for this for the purposes of this example, this tutorial, and we're going to leave it on auto number so that Access can automatically generate the numbers for us. All right, so this is very, very important when we are linking tables. So for the time being, we're going to leave it as ID, an auto number, and we're going to leave that as our primary key. Go over to the next one. Let's say, for instance, we're doing a form and we want the person's last name. So last, you can either go name like that, or we can go underscore. Make it easier for you to read. I'm going to go with the underscore. Oops. All right. I'm going to use the tab button, or I can click over there. And now I have options over here. And my default is short text. So I have short text, which allows me to go up to 255 characters. I have long text, that's 256 plus characters. I have different number formats, large number formats. I have a standard datetime format, and I have an extended datetime format. I can choose a currency, the auto number, as is used here in the ID field. Then we have a yes no option where you can type in where it uses yes, no, true, false, on, off. All right, that'll give you a checkbox that you can tick and untick. Then we have OLE objects. Now that is more for multimedia, photos, videos, audios, and things like that. But we don't use that very much anymore. Nowadays, we make use of the attachment. And then I can have hyperlinks as well that will take me to a URL. All right. Then we can have calculated fields, and we'll have a look at the lookup wizard later on to create a list or a combo box. Alrighty. So last name, I'm going to leave it a short text because we are just typing in text over there. With that, if we look to the bottom over here at our field properties, we have a field size. As you can see, it's 255 characters. We can go and change that to something smaller. Now we know a last name shouldn't be more than 20 characters long. So we're going to change that to 20 characters. Why are we doing that? Because that changes the overall size of our document at the end of the day. Now, changing from 255 to 20 doesn't seem like much when it comes to a single entry. But if you have thousands to tens of thousands or more, that does dramatically affect the size of your document at the end of the day. All right, then we have formats. We have a look at our formats at the moment. Because it's text, we don't have different types of formats. Input masks we'll come to later on. We're not going to look at captions now. Default values, we'll look at that when we get to numbers and currencies. And we're also going to be looking at validation rules along with validation text. Next, you need to determine whether your data that is being inputted is required or not. Can you successfully um, move forward with that information, such as a second email address? Is it really necessary, or a second contact number? Or do you need to have the email address or the secondary email address as well? So again, you must decide whether or not that information is required. And that will also affect how you can move forward on your form in your table and moving on to the next row of entries. So if you want to change that, there are two options. You can either come to the right hand side, click on the drop down arrow and select the yes. All right. Or you can just double click inside of it and it'll change it to no, to yes. So I'm going to leave it as no for now. Allow zero length. Yes. Okay, because it's on no. Indexing. Indexing is used for when you're going to be going back and searching for that field on a regular basis. So this could be serial numbers, package numbers, um, delivery note numbers, invoice numbers, things like that. These things that you might go back and look for on a regular basis. So sometimes you might want to index them. Again, you've got the option with yes, duplicates okay. That would be if you are going to be going back and say looking at last names, surnames. Now a lot of people might have the same surname, so yes, you want to allow duplicates if you decide to index it, or yes, no duplicates. So that could be invoice numbers, tracking codes, serial numbers, things like that. Um, or you can choose no. Again, this will make the size of your document slightly bigger because it has been indexed for you to make it easier for you to go and find things later on. Right. So one example or examples where you use your short text, last names, first names, addresses, cities, even things like phone numbers or postal codes where you're not going to be doing calculations with them. Short text should be sufficient. Your long text is more for notes, anything that is likely to be longer than 255 characters. Right, another idea, another thing that we can have over here. So let's say we have a count of whatever, right? We have to again decide what are we going to be doing with this count. And I'm going to be discussing the structure of a table just now. Let's say we want to do calculations with the counts. We want to add up our counts later. We want to get an average from it. We want to get the minimum number, the maximum number, things like that. We're going to want to put it into a number over there. All right. By changing the format to number, my field properties has now also changed, and my default value is a long integer. Now, a long integer really increases the size of your document, and for the most cases, you'll probably be using a byte or an integer. If you have decimals, you might be using singles or doubles. But if it's going to be something small, like let's see, like a grade, like you're in grade 10, 11, or 12, or something like that, you want to take a byte because that is your smallest possible numbers that you can have over there. In my description, I will add in the description of the different types of number formats that you can get and their sizes and their ranges as well. So we're going to go to byte over there. Our format, let's have a look at our format. So we have general, okay, and you can choose currency, fixed, standard, percentage, scientific. We're going to keep with general for now. And we're going to have a decimal places automated over there. Default value, you can have it automatically start with a 0 on your table if you want, or you can put in your own value over there. So if you want your default value is going to be grade 10s, 11s, and 12s, you can automatically have it start with a 10 over there. Or you can remove it completely if you don't have a default value. Again, choose whether it's required and whether you need it to be indexed. All right, other things that we can look at. Let's have a look at dates. So dates over here. All right. And let's just go with the standard date for now. All right. And we can have a look at our format. So we click down on the arrow. We have our general date, which is what is most commonly used. Our long date, medium dates, short dates, long time, medium time, and short time. For this example, I'm just going to make use of a short date over there. Okay. We're not going to work with the input mask just yet or any of the others. As usual, have a look if and decide whether beforehand whether it's required and whether you need to index it or not. Other possibilities that we can have, let's say we're checking to see whether something has been delivered. So we want a yes, no. Just get my spelling right over there. Right, there we're going to choose a yes, no option over here. So my format is yes, no. I can click on that, click on the drop down arrow, and I can have it as true, false, yes, no, or on, off. All right, so you can choose that from there. Now, please be aware how you choose that. Okay, your yes, no, true, false, on, off, because that is going to affect how you can do queries at a later stage. And the wording that you would need to use in those queries. To keep it simple, I'm going to go with the default yes, no over there. My default value, I'm going to keep that as a no. You only have two options over here, if I remember correctly. Okay, let's leave it as that. We can have it as no to have the checkbox empty, or yes to have the checkbox checked already. Validation rules and validation text we'll have a look at later, and whether or not it's indexed. All right, so there is no required option over there, if you notice that. Something else that we can look at is a combo box. So let's say I want to have a look at my drivers, and I want to make a list of my drivers. So I'll come over here, my data type, and this time I'm going to go to my lookup wizard. Okay, and just wait for that to open up. Right, the wizard creates a lookup field which displays a list of values you can choose from. How do you want your lookup field to get its values? I want the lookup field to get the values from another table or query. As you can see, that is linking two tables together, or I will type the values in that I want. So let's go with option B, type them in. Let's say next. How many columns do I want to show at a time? I just want one. I just want the person's name. And let's just start typing them in. So it's Peter, and Peter, and then tab, and we have Charles, and we have Sam. Right, so once you've got all the names or all the items inside there that you want, let's say it could be a list of milkshake flavors or cookie flavors. Once you've got all of them inside there, go to next, give it a name. What label do you want for you? Would you like your lookup field? Now I've already said drivers over there, so it's folded in drivers. I want to leave it like that. Do you want to limit entries to the choices? Yes, I want to limit. Do you want to store multiple values for this lookup? No, I don't. So I'm going to leave that unchecked. These are all the answers the wizard needs to create your lookup field. And let's say finish. Next one. Last one. Let's say we have attachments that we want to add in. So let's just call this attachments. Come to my data type, drop down arrow, and click on attachment. Now the reason why we choose attachment instead of the OLE object, okay, is because attachments, one, you have a larger variety of file types that you can attach inside of the attachment, and you can attach multiple files at the same time of different formats. So we're going to go with attached, and I'm going to say that it's not required over there. Just coming back to the drivers, just a quick little thing over there. I want to show you inside the field properties after you've gone through the lookup wizard. If we click on the lookup tab, you'll see that it is a combo box that has been created, and it has a value list. So that's the list that we created. And we can see there's Peter, Charles, and Sam inside there. One bound column, one column count at a time. We've got no column heads, and then just the rest of the information over there. All right. So now we've done all that. We've created our table. Go ahead and save it. And let's go back to our data sheet view. Right, so here's my table over here. Right, so start off, you put in surnames, so Smith, and you can just use the tab button to move to the right. You can put in your count whatever you want it to be. 5. The minute you come to dates, it has a little date picker on the right hand side. So anything that's under a date format will have a date picker, and you can choose the date. Let's go with today's date. Right, is it delivered? Yes or no? Let's mark that as yes. Let's go to our drivers. Now I've got a drop down arrow over here, and now I've got a list of all my drivers. So let's choose Charles. Attachments. The minute I click on an attachment, come on, just double click quickly, and then say add. Let's choose a file. So let's go to access lesson, and let's say we've got this PDF package delivery note, and say okay. Open. The minute it pops up over there, you can just say okay, or you can add more of them if you want, and you can say okay. And now you can see that I have one attachment over there. One thing that you need to note on the left hand side, you'll see that there's a little pencil over there, okay, that's showing you that you are busy editing or adding entries to this row, but it hasn't been saved yet. Okay, once I hit the tab button or I click on the next row, then it will automatically save that row for me over there. So if I go tab, right, now that pencil's gone, and now I can start with the next row over here. Right, but before you go ahead and you design a table, it's very, very important to sit and determine firstly, what information do you require, in what format is it going to be, and in what order is it going to be. Once you've got all that information, then you also need to decide whether or not that information will be required for you to successfully complete your task. So email addresses, some people don't have email addresses, so are you going to make that required or not? If you have, say, multiple contact numbers, a landline, mobile 1 and mobile 2, are you going to make any of those required or not? And some people don't have landlines, then they only have one mobile number. So again, you got to decide beforehand whether or not you want that required. On top of that, things like serial numbers, product codes, delivery codes. Are you going to be referring back to that on a regular basis? If so, you may want to index it as well. Alrighty. So that is the basics for a table over there. Let's have a look at the one that I created. And let's go have a look at the design view of it. All right, so I have my auto number over there. I have my last name, short text 20. First name, short text 20 as well, because I don't think that a name should be longer than 20. But you can always make that a little bit longer if you want to. Entirely up to you. I've got an address in. I've left it at 255 characters because I don't know how long the street name is going to be. I have a city. I don't think a city should be more than 50 characters long. I have a province. Now you'll see that my province is only 2 characters, and we're going to come back to that just now regarding the validation rules and the validation text as to why so short. Contact number, I've made it 10 characters because most numbers, local areas, local numbers are 10 characters long if you're not making use of international dialing codes. And I've put an input mask over there as well, which I'll discuss just now. Then I just got text, about 50 characters, that should be fine. Uh, Packages quantities, I've gone for my smallest possible size, byte, right? And my decimal places, because I don't want it to have any decimals, I've just said 0, but you can also set it to auto if you want to. So you can set it to auto over there. All right, input mask and that. Okay, we've left all that out. The package code, I've left it at 255 characters, although I can bring it down to, what's this, 12, 13, 14, if I really wanted to. So let's make that 20 just to make my document a little bit smaller. And as you can see, a lot of them, I've put them in as required. And with the packages code, because this is something that I might go back and look for on a regular basis, I've said index it, yes, with no duplicates, because every package code should be unique. Then we've got our date formats, and I just got my general date inside there. The same with the date delivered. Again, I just got my general date format inside there. Under my amount due, I've chosen currency. And under my currency options, I've got my general currency, which will automatically pick up the currency of your region. So South Africa will have the rand, Namibia will have the NAD, USA will have the dollar, and so forth. You can also choose a couple of the others over here if you want to. Next, we have the yes no option. I've just kept it as yes no to make it easier with my queries. My drivers, I've changed my field size to 50. And if I come to my lookup, I made use of the lookup wizard to create the combo box with a value list. And I've got 3 drivers inside there. And I've got my bounded column down to 1. And I've got my column count 1, which means that it'll show 1 item at a time when selected. And then I've got my attachment over there. All right, and I've just said yes, that is required. So let's come back to the front and let's have a look at this. Yes, save and done. All right. Oh, come on. Okay, there we go. All righty. So let's have a look at some of the information that I've got over here. So I've got the filter number, creating IDs for me. I've got their last names, first names, addresses, cities, provinces. As you can see, they're all 2 letters. My contact numbers have been formatted in a very specific way. I've got my emails, I've got my packages quantities, I've got my package codes formatted in a very specific manner over there. Then I've got my 2 dates, received and delivered, amounts due, and I've got whether or not they are delivered. So most of them have been delivered, the last one has not. They haven't checked it over there yet. My drivers, and everything has 1 attachment to it. Right, so let's understand these a little bit better and the different formats that we have. So data types for access. So short date is for names, surnames, addresses, company names, etc. A series of digits for which no mathematical calculations need to be performed, such as cell phone numbers and postal codes. The maximum number of characters in a short field text is 255. Long text and text entries longer than 255 characters, such as comments and explanations. Numbers, dates which consists of numbers on which mathematical calculations need to be performed. For example, age, amount, distance. Our date time format will give us our different formats for our dates and our times. Currency, monetary values, for example, the price of a house or the price of fuel. Auto number, sequential numbers starting at 1, which are automatically assigned by access for each new record. So what is a record? A record is every single row over here. Right, so everything in this row, that's 1 record. That's the second record over there. Okay. Yes, no. Those are called Boolean values: yes, no, true, false, on, off. The values yes or no will be assigned, for example, to indicate whether learner participates in sports, or in my example, whether or not the packages have been delivered. The OLE object, so that's graphics, photos, videos, music files, which are created with another application. So as you can see, it is limited to those four types over there. The hyperlink, web addresses which are linked to a document or a web page. So if something is maybe saved on a OneDrive or Google Drive or any one of those cloud um, storage hosting platforms, you can send a hyperlink to get to a document over there. Or you can simply link to a web page. Then attachments, similar to OLE. However, the attachment data type supports more file types, and you can also attach more than one file to a field. Okay, so that is your data types that you get when creating your table in the design mode. Right. Next up, we are going to look at our input masks. So an input mask is how you want the input to look on the front end. So if I come to my contact number, for instance, all right, I've got a backslash, uh, open parentheses, 3 zeros, backslash, close parentheses, 3 zeros, backslash, space, 4 zeros. Now, what does that mean? Well, before you can understand that, let's go have a look at our input mask codes. So let's come and have a look at the characters for that. So 0 means that you can add in digits from 0 to 9, and it is required. Okay, so looking back at my thing over here, I have to include 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 digits. Okay, before allowing me to move on. The number 9, if adding that to my input mask, is a digit or a space, entry not required. The plus and minus signs are not allowed. All right, so I could always come back and I could change this space over here to a 9 if I wanted to, okay, because it allows for a space as well. The hashtag or the pound sign, depending on how you refer to it, digit or space, entry is not required. Spaces are displayed as blanks while in edit mode, but blanks are removed when data is saved. Plus and minus signs are allowed. So if I were to type in 1, 2, 3, 4, space 5, 6, 7, when I move on, the space between the 4 and the 5 would disappear over there. The capital L, similar to the 0, where I have my digits that are required. These are my letters A to Z, and it means that it is required in my input mask. If I put in a question mark, again, that is just for my letters, nothing else, and it is optional. So I could have L question mark, which means that the first letter would be required and any other letters I want to put in there are optional, such as putting in somebody's initials, for instance. The A, capital A, why do I have two of them over there? I'll just have to fix that one. Letter digits, entry required. Sorry, I'll fix that one up just now and I'll send a correction out for that. The ampersand character, so any character or space, entry is required. Right, so you're going to have a whole lot of them over there. Then the capital C, any character or space and entry is optional. Right, your decimal placeholders that you can use for your thousands, your date and your time separators, that is all dependent on your region and how your software has been set up. It could be full stops, commas, colons, semicolons, dashes, and forward slashes. All right, so again, if you want to know how that looks or how that works, have a look inside of your options section of one of your Microsoft 365 applications, and you'll be able to see how your decimal and your thousand separators work. Right, then we have a couple characters over here. The less than character causes all characters to be converted to lowercase. The greater than character will do the opposite and cause all characters to be converted to uppercase. The exclamation mark causes the input mark to display from right to left rather than from left to right. Characters typed into the mask always follow it from left to right. You can include the exclamation point anywhere in the input mask. It's not something that we'll use very often, but it is a functionality that has been added in. If we look at the backslash, causes the character that follows to be displayed as the literal character. For example, backslash A is displayed as just A. So remember, we've got the A at the top over there. Okay, so where it'll say letter or digit is required. If I actually want to have the letter A inside there, then I would use the backslash before that. Right, then we have our double quotation marks. Characters enclosing double quotation marks will be displayed literally. Alrighty, so let's have a example. Look at the examples over here. Cipher numbers. Example of the data. That's just all one string. My input mask would simply be 10 zeros over there. What the user will have to enter is exactly 10 digits. Now you can put that into your notes, and your notes is this section over here, your description, which is optional. So I can put into my notes here, must be 10 digits long. Alrighty, always remember to save. Let's have a look at some others. Some landline numbers with some area codes. 012 dash 565 6469. Now you can see there's your parentheses and there's a dash over there. And just what your input mask could possibly look like. You got your parentheses with your 3 digits inside, your dash, and then your remaining 7 digits. Again, it's 10 digits long. They have to put that in to be able to move on to the next place. But your brackets and your dash will be shown in between as well. So even though they just type it in straightforward, it will be displayed like this on the front end. Now with mine, when I try and do something like this, it brings up the backslashes for me, okay, to show that it is a literal thing that has to appear over there. So there's nothing wrong with this code. It's just saying literally show the opening parentheses, literally show the closing parentheses, and literally show the space over there. All right, so a person's initials over here, they're saying greater than, so it's going to be moved to uppercase. L, which is a compulsory letter. 2 question marks, which is 2 optional letters. So 1 compulsory initial, 2 optional ones, all will be converted to uppercase. So there's J, JW, JWB. So there's different ways in which you can add it. You cannot go past the 3 because it's only allowing you up to 3 letters over there. And there can be no numbers because there's no space for numbers. There's no 0 and no 9 added into the input mask over here. Another example, AWD78 is the data that you input in. You need 3 letters, compulsory, and 2 digits, compulsory. But it doesn't matter whether it's lowercase or uppercase because it has not been specified by a greater than or less than over there. So 3 compulsory letters, either uppercase or lowercase, followed by 2 compulsory digits. Moving on, there's another one where we have the digits first and then the letters, and they're in uppercase, so that's how it'll be displayed. Even if you type in the letters in lowercase, because your input mask says 2 digits, and then after that, everything following the greater than will be in uppercase, and that is 3 compulsory letters over there. So 2 compulsory digits followed by 3 compulsory uppercase letters. So you can still type them in lowercase, it will just convert it to uppercase for you automatically. Alrighty, so let's go back to here and let's go see if I have a couple other input masks. Let me just have a look here. I can't remember. Shortest. What was that? Yeah, that's here's another input mask over here. So I said greater than three letters forward slash 6 digits forward slash 3 digits. So it has to be put in that format over there. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And it will automatically make my three letters capital over there or uppercase. Alrighty, so there's just some examples over there. So now that we've had a look at the package code and we've had a look at the contact number, input masks, let's go and view them in the front again. So as you can see over here, showing my brackets and showing my space, even though I just simply typed in 071 113 4785 without adding the other things in there, it automatically puts them in for me over there. So my package codes, as you can see, all of them, the first three are letters and they're all in uppercase. Then I have my 6 digits, and then thereafter I have my 3 digits after that. All right. So that is how your input masks work. It tells you how the format will look in the front and what information is required to be able to fulfill it. Now, you would generally do that if you want your contact information to be formatted in a very specific way, or as I've mentioned before, package codes, serial numbers, delivery notes, they generally have a very specific format. So to ensure that there's no errors when entering the data, you would go ahead and you would put in a input mask to ensure accuracy over there. All right. Moving on from input masks, next we're going to have a look at validation rules. So if I just go through here and go look for some validation rules, yeah, under my province, as I said before, I've changed my field size to 2 characters because I do not want anybody to add in any more than 2 characters. And I have a whole bunch of two-lettered groups over here, and I have a validation text. So before we have a look at that, let's go and look at how our um, validation rules work. So validation rules allow for specific data to be entered, determined beforehand. Validation rules are always accompanied by a validation text explaining the rule if entered incorrectly. So examples of validation rules: a grade, your rule would be 10 or 11 or 12. And your possible text that you could put in there, the grade must be only 11, 10, 11 or 12. So if someone were to go and put in 9, it would bring up this text stating that that is incorrect and you must choose one of those options over there. Another example of a validation rule, making use of the operators, and say shifts is greater than and equal to 1 and less than and equal to 4. So what this is shifts must be a value from 1 to 4. So it can be 1 or greater than 1, it can be 4 or less than 4. All right. So there's a big difference between using the AND function, because it will include those, and using the OR function. So the AND function generally gives you a range, depending on the operators that you use, or very specific conditions, whereas the OR function only allows for very specific things to be entered in. Another example, shift amount is greater than 0, so the amount cannot be 0 or negative. Start date, greater than or equal to, and then the date. When working in Access, dates are always inside of hashtags or pound signs, whichever one you want to call it. So start date must be on or after 1 February 2026. Okay. Sorry. Um, yes, so let's go back to our access table and let's have a look at this now. So our validation rule over here. Now that is for my provinces. Now a lot of people might type the provinces in incorrectly, no, wrong spelling and things like that, which will make searching a lot more difficult later on. So what I've gone and done is I've created um, a table of what do you call it, provinces, and let's just open that up, and I've given them abbreviations. So just give me a second. Let's let just open up. All right. So here's our provinces in Mpumalanga, Northwest, Gauteng, Free State, Natal, Eastern Cape, Western Cape, Northern Province, and Limpopo, and all have a two-digit abbreviation next to them. All righty. So generally that would be a standardized thing in your company or in your school, wherever you work in. Yeah. And you would be able to use that over here, and everybody would understand what it is. So my validation rule, I can use things such as or, which I've made use of over here. I can make use of and, whoops, let's see, this one, yeah, come on, um, and I can make use of operators in there as well. So coming back to here, is my abbreviations, MP or NW or GP and so forth. So I've added all 9 of them in. Keep in mind that when you are working with text, you need to put it in double quotation marks for your validation rules. Numbers can be typed in as is. Dates must be inside of hashtags. Okay. So I've added in my validation rules over here. So I can choose one of those. You need to input one of those, and you can only do 2 characters. And if you don't get it right, I've got a text over here that says input one of the following abbreviations, and I give them the selection of abbreviations that they can type in over there. All right, so that's your validation rules over there. So you're giving them very, very specific parameters for them to work in. All righty. Let's see if there's anything else over here. I don't think there is. Let's just double check. There's input, currency, yes, no, short text. Okay, that's that. So that is your tables, all right, with your data types, your input masks, and your validation rule, along with the validation text. Again, before you start creating your table, map it out, determine what kind of information you want to gather, what fields you're going to need, whether or not those fields are required for you to be able to successfully complete your task, and if there's anything that you're going to be referring back to on a regular basis, you might want to look at indexing that as well. Okay, moving on, let's have a look at queries. So what are queries? Queries is information taken from either other queries, or most likely from a table where you take bits of information and you want to find out something very specific. Let's say you've got a class of 30 students, male and female, and you want to see how many males and how many females are in that class. So you would use a query, and um, you would determine your count over there from that. So designing queries, examples of simple query criteria. So we have our data type, which can be applied, our examples and notes. So first we have a look at our operators. Operators equals, we all know that equals something. The next one, which is a less than and greater than together, that is does not equal. So that's the opposite of equals. Then we have a greater than and equal to, less than and equal to. So those are our basic operators over there. Let's have a look at some examples. So number, um, greater than 30 tests if the value if the field is greater than 30. We have a less than and equal to 100. Test if the value of the field is less than or equal to 100. Using text, as I said, got to be in double quotation marks. So equals Jones. Test if the contents of the field is Jones. If there's any Jones there, it will pick it up, even if Jones is only a part thereof. Less than M. Test if contents of the field starts with any letters from A to L. You'll see that it does not include M because it does not say less than and equal to. Greater than M, Test if contents of the field starts with the letters N to Z. Does not include M because there's no equal sign over there. Okay. You'll note the values can be entered in lowercase or uppercase, but the spelling must be exactly as displayed in the data table. So if I come back here and we go back to the front, and I want to search for Lillard, again, I only put in one L over there instead of the two L's in my query. It will bring back a 0 result for me. All right. You do not have to add the inverted commas. Access can detect that the data is of type text and will automatically add the inverted commas. Now, yes, Access has advanced to that point, but for the purposes of just ensuring that your query does work properly, it is best practice just to put the inverted commas, inverted quotation marks yourself over there. All right. Then we have our yes no options. So you'll use that with your check boxes over here. So let's say I want to see how many have been delivered and how many have not been delivered. I'm more likely going to be looking at how many is not being delivered. So when I create my query under that field that I carry over, I will say no under my criteria to see how many have not been delivered. And I'll show you just now how to create a query and how to do that. If we work with, so it's yes, true, on, or no, false, off. So those three go together and those three go together. Again, this is where it becomes very important which format you chose. Was it the yes, no, true, false, or on, off? So test if the contents of the field is true, and then the opposite is test if the contents of the field is false. So no inverted commas should be used because the data type is not text. All right, so please remember that. Rather go and put your text inside of inverted commas so that you don't get confused with your yes and your no's over there. Dates, as I said before, need to go in between hashtags. So this is equal to 26021. So it will go through all the dates and it will only select the ones that shows the 1st of February 2026. Less than 2026-0201. So it will go and look for all the dates prior to that. All right. Just a little note over here. The date format in the region settings must be set as year, 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 month, month, day, day for the example queries above to for the example query showing here. So depending on the regional formatting of how your dates are formatted for your region, you'll go and type them in accordingly. I know that in America, in the US, they work with month first, then day, then year. So they would have, if it was, say, the 1st of February, it would be 02/01/2026. All right, so just double check your formatting if you're not unfamiliar with that before reading your dates and inputting them, just to avoid any issues over there. Right, numbers. Numbers, we don't need any hashtags, we don't need any commas, any double inverted commas. We can simply type the numbers in there. So greater than 30 and less than 40. Test if the value of a field is greater than 30 and less than 40. So 31 to 39 is what it can return for you over there. Another example, and that's using the and sign. And over here, we have greater than and equal to 30 and less than and equal to 40. Test the value of the field is greater than or equal to 30 and less than or equal to 40. So with your first one, just look for the results 31 to 39. This one, including the equal sign, will include the numbers 30 and 40 in a search. Your next example equals 30 or equals 40. Test if the value of the field is equal to 30 or 40. Nothing in between, nothing before, nothing after. It only goes and looks for those two values. That is it. So that is why that is your OR function. Your AND function can include multiple things depending on your operators that you use. Your OR function gives you exact things to use over here. Much like my validation rule, where I had the province abbreviations in there. If we go back to that for a second, let's go back to our design mode and we go to our provinces. right? You can see that I use the or function over there. So you have to choose this one or that one or that one. If you have multiple choices that you can input, you can only choose one of those options over there. Right, text inverted commas. So greater than C and less than K. Test if the contents of the field start with C to J. Or actually, it's D to J. Sorry, change that to D because it's not including C because it's greater than C. Here's another example: green or blue. Test if the contents of the field is green or blue. Another one. Now we've had the and we've had the or. Now we're going to use the not operator. So it is not green. Test if the contents of the field is anything other than green. So if green is in any of my text in that field, it will not display that record over there. Dates, again, in between hashtags, greater than equal to the 1st of January 2026 and less than and equal to the 31st of March 2026. So test for dates in 2026 in that range, including those dates because I've got the equal signs over there. So equals to 2026-0201 or equals 2026-0301. So test if the date is the 1st of February 2026 or the 1st of March 2026. If it finds either one of those two, it will return a value, otherwise nothing. Another example over here using the not again, not 2026-0228. Test if the date is anything other than 28 February 2026. So any record that has that date in it, it will not include that record over there. Okay. And that is basically my operators for my queries. Now let's go look at creating a couple queries over here. So I've got my table. I filled in all my information over here. Let's actually go and fill in one more so I can show you. So I go to new. Actually, hold on. Let me just go to the end over here, just so I can show you when I get to the end. Right, so if I'm at the end over here and I've done the rest, and I hit tab, it'll automatically take me to a new line. It'll show me that I'm busy with that current line over there. It hasn't allocated a auto number for my ID yet because I have not completed my row of information and I haven't moved on to the next line. It will only save that information when you move on to the next line. So let's go tab. Let's put in a surname. So let's go with Smith. First name, Granny. Not Granny, Granny. Granny Smith. Right, and she says at 124 Sweet Lane, and she's in. Where shall we put her? Let's put her in Strand. There we are, next to the coast, and she's in the Western Cape. But let's see what happens if I put in the wrong code. HG. It now says input one of the following abbreviations. Okay, so I say okay. Put that back, and I know that Strand is in the Western Cape. Let's put in a number. So she's 081 4545795. As you can see, it's automatically formatting it as I type it in. All right, and her is info at grannysmith.com. Yes. How many packages are we delivering to her? Let's go with 2 packages today. Right, now, when I get to my package code, I cannot see the format yet. Right, so I need to start typing my format. So I'm going to go with, and I don't have my caps on, so I'm just going to type in SMI. As you can see, it's automatically bringing up that format. Let's say we receive the stuff today to be delivered. So it's 260509. And we need, and this is our second parcel that we've received today, or second delivery that we've received. And I know that I need to have 3 digits at the end. All right, so I can't just put in a 2 over there. I need to go 002. All right, and then tab. All right, let's choose the dates. I'm just going to put in today's date. Okay, when's it going to be delivered? Well, my average is 3 days from receipt, so it'll be delivered on the 12th. How much does she owe us? It's 2 packages, so that's 100. Has it been delivered? No, it has not. Who's going to be my driver? I have two options over here. I can click on the drop down arrow, or if I know the first letters of my drivers, it says Peter, I can type in P, and it'll bring up the first P for me. If I have more than one person starting with a P, I can just continue to type in their name. Otherwise, if I'm happy with that, I can hit tab, all right, and then I can double click on my attachment to add an attachment. Just a quick little thing over here. Let's go back one. To keep your hands on the keyboard and save some time, if you want to check a checkbox, you can simply hit the spacebar on your keyboard. So it'll check it, again, it'll uncheck it. So let's tab one more time. Then again, you can use your spacebar just to save time. All right, and it'll bring up attachments. Let's go add. Okay, let's put in the delivery note. Open. I can add more if I want to. Once I'm happy with everything, say OK. And it'll tell me how many attachments are over there. And then I can go over to the next line if I want to. Tab. There we go. And now it has saved that entry over there for me. And when I'm done, simply save, and then I can close it. Right, so now I've got all my information in, and I want to start creating queries. I want to find out things. So we start off at tabs at the top of here. We go to create. Now we've got templates, tables, queries, forms, reports. Don't worry about macros and code. That is advanced. We're not going to look at that. Let's have a look at queries. So I've got query design, I've got query wizard. To keep it simple, we're going to go with the query wizard. All right. And I have 4 different choices over here. I'm going to choose the simple query wizard. And just give it a moment. Come on. So you're just waiting for it to respond. Let's just quickly get my query ready. All right. So some of the reason my query wizard doesn't want to work, but you would go open up your query wizard. You would select a simple query. Then it would ask you which table or query you would like to choose from. My option was going to be deliveries. Then I would go next and I would give it a name. So I would say deliveries underscore query, and then I would say finish to view it. Right, but because that's not going to work, I'm just going to go with the standard query design. So we can open it up. Right, so I can add my tables. So I've got my deliveries table and I've got my example table over here. I've got links and I've got queries if I had other queries than that that I could select from. But I'm going to go with tables and I'm going to double click on tables. Right, so from here I'm going to choose what information I want in my query, which is what you would also have to choose when going with the query wizard. Right, so I want my ID, I want last name, first name, and let's say we just want the provinces, for instance, right? So now here's my first query over here. And this is all the information I need. I don't need to carry over all this other information because it's not needed at the moment. All I want to know is the names, last names, the first names of my customers and the provinces, right? And my ID. I will generally keep my ID with my auto numbering in there because that is my link to other tables and things. If I want to show something or not show something, I can just check or uncheck it. But before we carry on, let's save our query. Okay, and let's call it deliveries underscore provinces underscore Q for query. I can't spell. Okay, let's quickly fix that up. Provinces Okay, query, and say okay. If you do make a mistake with your spelling, you can always just right click on any of your objects on the right hand side here. Just make sure that it's closed first before you do that. Right click, and you can go and rename it over there. So I can change this deliveries, and I can change that to underscore T if I wanted to. But because I'm busy working with it here at the moment and I've got my queries open, I'm not going to do that right now. Right, so now we've saved it. We've got our fields in that we want. Let's run it. Okay, so you always save first, then you run. You don't just go straight to your view over there. What your run does is performs the actions specified in a query. So if you've got criteria in here, specifications, if you've done other calculations, it'll run all those first and then it'll bring back only the results. So at the moment, I've got all 11 um, entries in here because I haven't specified any criteria yet. And you can see that my ID is showing last name, first name, province. Let's go back to my design view. Let's untick the ID, save and run it again. And now you can see ID is not showing, but it is still there. All right. Now, what do I want to do? I want to see my criteria. What am I looking for? Let's say I'm looking for all my Western Cape, um, Western Cape deliveries. So now I'm going to type it in how it shows on my table, and that is WC. And I put that in my double inverted commas. Let's save it. Let's run it. And there we go. Now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 under my Western Cape. If I go back to my um, design mode, I can say Western Cape or let's go with Gauteng Province, GP, save, run, and now showing all my Western Cape and my Gauteng Province criteria is over there. So that is how I would use the OR function over here. Another one that I could do is I could add in something else, and I could say that I want um, packages that are delivered. So we'll put our delivered field in, and let's get rid of Gauteng province. Let's say I'm only looking for the Western Cape, and I want packages delivered, and I want it as yes. So now this is where the yes, no, true, false, on, off comes in. Because I've set it up as yes, no inside of my table, I need to type in yes or no over here. So let's save it, let's run it and see if it works. And I've got 2 of them in the Western Cape that have been delivered. If I take this out and I run it again, you can see that there's 4 in total, 2 undelivered. So it only showed me my delivered ones. Go back and I type in no, and I save this, and I run. Now it'll show me only the ones that are not delivered. Now it's drawing all this information from my deliveries table over here. So as the information changes over there, it will automatically update my query over here. Right, so this, where I had Western Cape and Gauteng province underneath each other, and I was using the OR function. Now I'm using the AND function, which means that it has to fulfill 2 criteria. It has to have Western Cape in it, and it has to be no on deliveries. If it does not fulfill both those criteria, it will not show up. As you can see, there were 4 Western Capes. 2 of them were delivered, 2 of them weren't delivered. So the 2 that were delivered did not fulfill the second criteria. That's why they were not shown. So that's the same as the AND function over there. Right, so let's save that one and let's close it off. Let's create another query. All right, so I'm just going to go with my query design so that I know it works. And I'm going to open up my deliveries again. Bring in my ID, my last name, my first name. All right, and let's have a look at um, dates. All right, so I can go with date received. So that's the date we received it, and the date that it was delivered. Now I want to see how long in between that is. So we can create a new field to the right over here, we're going to call this field duration. So you type in the name of the field, colon, space. Now what I want to do, I want to see the difference between my date received and my date delivered. Okay, so I'm going to take my date delivered and I'm going to minus my date received over here. So what I want to do, I want to, in square brackets, type in date delivered, close off my square brackets, because I'm working with the field name, all right, minus, open square brackets again, the next field name, and please remember that you have to type these in exactly as the field name is typed in. So that's date received, okay, and close it off. Right, and that's all I need to do, and let's see if that works. So let's save it. Right, I've got to save this query, and we're going to call this deliveries dates. Hold on, sorry, deliveries underscore dates underscore Q. Right, so that we know that that's a query. Why do I do that? Because my queries and my tables can look similar. So if you don't pay close attention to your icons or you're not familiar with them, you could get confused between them. At least the Q on the end tells me that I'm working with a query at that moment, or that's open. Right, let's run this. Okay, now saying there, date received, and it's not understanding it. So let's go and have a look at this. Let's just move this along a little bit, and we'll make this field a little bit bigger. Let's just make it a little bit bigger. And why? Because I swapped those two around. So received. There we go. So you'll see that it'll bring up as an unknown parameter because it didn't recognize it because it wasn't spelled exactly the same as that one. So let's save it and let's run it again. And there we go. Here's all my records, and my average duration is 3 days between receipt of the packages and delivery of the packages. Yeah, I've got four. There's 4 days over there that took me to deliver those packages over there. All right, so there's just a couple examples of how you can make use of your queries using the OR and the AND function. So the AND function is putting in a criteria across multiple fields. So that's an AND function, which means that the query or the fields need to fulfill all the specified queries in order to show up inside of your query over there. If you're making use of the OR function, it must fulfill one of those criterias to be able to show up inside of your query over here. Right, and then we have our calculations that we can do, making use of our fields to do simple calculations over there. Another thing that I'd like to show you over here, coming back to talking about calculations, to finish off with, come to deliveries, we go back to our table over here, and on the home tab, under records, we have the totals option over here. So if I activate that, it gives me totals over here. And to give an example, here under packages quantities, let's click on that. I get a drop down arrow. I can get the sum. Let's start with that. It's a total of 36 packages. I can take the average, 3.27 packages per person. I can get a count. There's a total of 11 entries. All right. I can get the maximum. So the biggest package was 6. You can see that over there. I can do the minimum, which is 2. I have a few of those. And then I have other functions over here. I can go back to none. When I'm done with totals, that is great if you just want to quickly check something. Generally, you make use of your queries for something like that. I can come and I can just switch off my totals again over there. Alrighty, and that is your introduction to your tables, setting up your tables with their data types, the functions of all the different data types, the formatting your field properties for your different data types, including where's it now? Input masks, all right, such as under your contacts or under your package code, making use of the different input masks over there, or even creating a validation rule over there. Then coming over to our queries, yes, coming over to our queries, we have our different types of queries where we can put in different criteria for that. So this is our delivery date over here, or even our provinces. So this was the using the AND function, or changing it and putting in two different criteria over here. Um, Maybe using, say, cutting province again and changing this to yes. So yes, saving that, running it, and there's my entries over there. So two in the Western Cape that were delivered, two in Gauteng province that were delivered. If I come back to my deliveries, I go have a look, Gauteng province, I've got 1, 2, so both of them were delivered. Western Cape, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 entries, of which only 2 were delivered. All right, I hope that helps you much. I will put in all these documents, um, the data types, input masks, query operators, and the provinces into the description for you to download, including this Access document for you to work through and have a look at. All right, keep well. Bye bye.